This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Good afternoon. We are doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business here with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. The on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Big day for Bitcoin and the NASDAQ closing at an all-time high above 20,000 for the first time. Stocks finishing mostly higher across the board, with the NASDAQ, the star of the show today, closing at an all-time high. The Dow unable to recover its momentum following the release of the Consumer Price Index, which came out first thing this morning, which came in pretty much as expected. Looks like it's ticking higher again. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of nearly 100 points. The S&P 500 finished higher by 49. The NASDAQ jumping 348 points, settling at 20,035. Its 37th record close of the year and its first close above 20K. Big tech stocks in the spotlight, many of them hitting record highs. Apple, Amazon, Google parent company Alphabet, Meta, Tesla, all at record highs. NVIDIA, the magnificent one, an exception here. Microsoft also an exception among the Mag 7 names. Gold rallying as well. This after the latest inflation report pretty much came in line with expectations. Gold settling at $2,756.70 an ounce, the highest we've seen since October. The Consumer Price Index, one of the big enchiladas of economic reports that we get on a monthly basis, up 0.3% last month, pretty much in line with analysts' expectations, but yes, up. Natural gas futures posting a big jump today after a forecast for another cold blast along the East Coast, according to Phil Flynn, our friend at Price Futures Group. Looks like the East Coast bracing for frigid air flooding the central and eastern portion of the United States later this week. Taking a look at Bitcoin, it has moved above 100,000 again and looks like stayed there for a while and up for a record high close above, or the first close above 100,000. Right now at 101,360. Ethereum at around 3,800, and Doge at the moment at 41 cents. We're watching the latest news out of Los Angeles City Hall, that wage ordinance, and we'll discuss the latest news with Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. She'll be joining me live later this hour. The future of TikTok is ticking. It's still up in the air. TikTok is not done fighting after a federal appeals court upheld the sale of or ban law last week. I'll discuss the latest on TikTok with Chad RUBACK, who is an attorney that specializes in appellate cases. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, Bitcoin, the whole works. NASDAQ at an all-time high above 20K. Bitcoin, its first close above 100,000. Joining us live now, the one and only John NAJARIAN. Dr. J, as he's known, of the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, has the laser eyes on. John NAJARIAN, thank you very much for taking the call here on this big day here today.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you almost every day that we can do this, but especially on record days, Frank. So thank you.
Absolutely. So here we are on a milestone day, a record-shattering day for the NASDAQ. Bitcoin getting a lot of attention, too. Take it from the top, and what is getting your attention here today?
Well, certainly that inflation data was really the catalyst for just about everything, from Bitcoin to the NASDAQ. And obviously, when rates go down, instruments that do not have yield or have low yield tend to be very, very much in focus for investors, because the competition for investor dollars that normally would be going and chasing into a high-yielding asset, for instance, when the assets look like they're going to see another rate cut, which September 18th certainly does appear to be the next time we'll see that now, Frank. It's close to 90-some-odd% right now, according to the CME tool that they track the likelihood that we will see a rate cut of a quarter point. I think the Bitcoin and the rally that was spurred partly by this, what went on with the reaction to the inflation report was certainly part of it, but it was also a couple days sell-off in digital assets that took Bitcoin back down to 94,000, and for it to get back up above 101,000 so quickly, it's pretty amazing. And I guess it speaks to people like Michael Saylor and all the people that follow him into his investing strategy over at MicroStrategy.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's something that we haven't explored that thoroughly here on this program. But what about Michael Saylor and his strategy?
Well, what he's been doing is very successfully over and over again is selling his various parts of his Bitcoin portfolio, buying back his shares, and then if the asset dips as it did this week, he buys it back at a $6,000 or $7,000 in this case $6,000 or $7,000 discount. And the more often that he does that, it's just been pretty phenomenal. He's been almost scalping $1 billion each time he does that. And this week may be one of his record weeks in terms of how accurately he called a new bottom, at least for the short term in Bitcoin, and how quickly he was able to then buy back shares in MicroStrategy and basically reduce the number of shares in the company and thus cause the value of the company to increase.
All right, so you follow what he's doing, certainly. Anyone else that you've been following closely these days on Bitcoin and the crypto space overall?
Well, so many people have been getting in a bigger and bigger way. Grant Cardone, you know that we have that partnership with him. He is doing a Bitcoin real estate fund, which people have been certainly pretty excited about that. And his brother is very big in digital assets, Bitcoin primary among those. But it's really been an interesting journey for people because it seems more and more the intended consequence of having an ETF has definitely expanded the pool of people that have access to Bitcoin, even if they don't have the knowledge or the willingness to learn about hard wallets, software wallets, and things like that to trade the actual Bitcoin. They're able to trade it through their Schwab or Fidelity account with the ETFs, and that has been a game changer, certainly for price as well as distribution of the amount of Bitcoins that are available. I think that's been the game changer, as well as President Trump's nominee for the head of the SEC.
Right, so a lot of big now names emerging here that people are talking about now. So, yeah, there'll be a new sheriff in town at the SEC, and as we heard today, also at the FBI as well. So a lot of interesting things happening. Looks like the animal spirit's certainly alive and well here heading into to the new year. Also, the Treasury Secretary, also pro-crypto, President Trump pro-crypto. How much more does this thing have to run?
Well, I would think that digital assets will, if the nominees stay the course and the president even decides that he wants a Bitcoin reserve, if you will, which he has said at times during his basically march up to the election, that he wanted to have something somewhat similar to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And that is something that obviously some of the Latin and South American countries have gravitated towards, is basically stockpiling some Bitcoin. If indeed the government did that, you can only imagine there's not enough Bitcoins. It would basically mean a doubling or tripling of the value of that asset over these next 4 years. I think there's very much an optimistic attitude for everybody in crypto, but it doesn't mean that we go straight up forever. Just means that people are now really believing in the asset class, and more people will be putting it on either their personal or their institutional balance sheets.
All right, and as far as adoption of crypto and adoption of blockchain and all that, a lot of discussion about that. Charlie Gasparino, I know, talked about that this week, and among crypto critics, they point to that. It's not like the internet was, where everybody was eager to Google themselves or whatever that platform was back in those days that we did. What about adoption of Bitcoin, and how do you answer the Bitcoin critics, even to this point, despite the eye-popping, unbelievable run-up we've seen this year?
I really don't know that they've got much of an argument anymore. I mean, again, the fact that you've got so many people now able to own the asset, something that many of us thought was, just one of the reasons I was not a fan of Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, was that a lot of the regular rank and file Americans were not given access to Bitcoin because they refused to let there be an ETF. And so you can only imagine people that look at it now at 5 times the price that it was just 18 months ago, think that, wow, what if they would have said you couldn't buy Apple or you couldn't buy some of the top performing stocks like Microsoft and Google? What if they had said that? Well, luckily it's now available, but it certainly was, I think, disastrous for a lot of investor wealth to not let regular Joes and Janes participate unless they were willing to really go out on their own and be, pretty much the first on their block or the first in their town, maybe even, to understand blockchain technology and Bitcoin. And because of that, they've missed out on a move from, like I say, 18,000 18 months ago to now 101,000 and a record close today.
That's amazing. You've done an amazing job with us here, John NAJARIAN, on this program, explaining in plain English the crypto world, Bitcoin, and so forth. And now XRP taking the spotlight here, soaring as well as this Ripple stablecoin, right, prepares to launch. What do we need to know about that one?
Well, that stablecoin will be exceedingly popular, and that's why we've seen such a dramatic move. It's in the neighborhood of sevenfold just over the past couple, the past month and a half. It's been a pretty amazing trip for that one. Ethereum broke through 4,000 level again today and was able to just see a tremendous buying of that. I think it was up 5.5 or 6% today. And I think Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin are some of the most stable that you want to watch in that group. But certainly XRP, as you've said, is one of them that has captured investor interest. The fact that it might be a true stable coin and pegged, some even say, to the dollar, is something that's causing just a huge ripple effect, if you will, into that coin.
All right, so we got the record high close for Bitcoin today at 101,433. What time does the Bitcoin market actually close? When do we get the closing print on Bitcoin every day?
Well, as you know, we don't, because it trades 24/7. But you're right. They do market generally at the end of our day, at least for us in America. They more or less market at the end of the U.S. trading day. And it doesn't even slow down at that point, of course, because it is a global asset that does really trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The New York Stock Exchange is trying to push towards a 5-day-a-week model of 23 hours, I believe. But yeah, Bitcoin is something that, since its very inception, was viewed as something that could and now does trade globally 24 hours a day.
Yep. Very good. Yeah, well, with so much attention focused on this record high close for Bitcoin, and of course, some people think Bitcoin is still a physical coin, which it isn't, folks. So the education process continues. And again, you've done an amazing job with all of this. And of course, some of the other coins that get attention that have also seen big run-ups. Doge, as you hear that word a lot now because of the acronym Department of Government Efficiency, run by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, and then of course Shiba Inu. Let's not forget about that one that created a lot of wealth in recent years. And yeah, I remember I was asking you, is lightning going to strike twice with Shiba? But it looks like lightning struck multiple times with some of these coins here.
Yeah, it certainly has, and any of these alternative assets or alternative coins, altcoins, need is somebody big enough to drive interest in them. And once that happens, it's Katie bar the door. So that has happened in spades in the form of Elon Musk, of course, with his love of both Doge and Shiba Inu. And I suspect that he will continue to be that cheerleader rather than slowing down. I think he's going to just keep putting the pressure, if you will, on that particular asset. And the fact that it's also in the news for the Department of Government Efficiency is one of the reasons I think you want to really pay attention to that one.
Very interesting. All right, at this point, by the way, the NASDAQ's above 20,000 for the first time, more than 300 points. NVIDIA did participate in the rally, as it turns out here, up more than $4 at 139 and change. Microsoft also higher on the day. Apple slipping a bit at the close. What about that big news here?
Well, again, the NASDAQ stocks that generally speaking have those lower, if any, dividends. So in other words, the yield that they offer is limited, and thus the lower interest rates go, the more attractive many of those assets are. They're also some of the most likely candidates to be expanding and borrowing money so that they can feed that expansion. And the price of borrowing being cheaper is certainly something that is felt by the IWM, the Russell 2000, as well as the NASDAQ, and both of them very, very popular today. And certainly some of the earnings that were out there, it obviously Oracle was not one of the leaders of that just in the last little bit with some of the guidance that they offered, but there's more than enough of those that really are pedal to the metal right now. And it seems that Google's numbers, along with their Willow, that new chip that they've developed, is something that has really focused people back in on both tech and chips again.
All right. And at this point, let me ask you the big question here. Any specific places where you are putting money now, John NAJARIAN, and or taking it off the table?
Well, we've been doing a lot of speculative trading in super microcomputer, and that's one that you've reported time and time again over the past, I suppose, at least 2 months for first the Hindenburg, which is a short seller that came in and put out a very strong negative piece on Supermicro. They called into question their accounting. The stock fell dramatically from the $80 level, let's say, all the way down to $17 a share. It made that spectacular rebound in the past month, coming back from 17 to into the $40 range. And then people took profits, and now it seems like they're reloading, getting ready again for another rebound. And they've got an auditor again. They of course, their previous auditor had quit because of the questions about the accounting practices. And now they've got a new auditor. They've had their own external folks take a look at the accounting practices and gave them a clean bill of health. So that's one that we've been trading very actively lately. SMCI, Super Microcomputer.
which actually slipped today, did not participate in the rally, down a couple of bucks to 38 and change. Very interesting. Well, John, thank you very much for taking the call here on this banner day for tech names as well as crypto. John NAJARIAN, Dr. J, as he's known, on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion. His latest book, It's Not an Option, with his brother Pete NAJARIAN. And John, thank you very, very much. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon, given all the exciting things happening. We wish you a wonderful evening. We'll be looking for you on social media. And thanks again for taking the call here today.
Of course. Thank you very much, Frank.
Have a great night, and we'll continue here in just a moment. Wrap up the day on Wall Street and talk about what's happening on the local business scene. Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, will be joining me live coming up here shortly. But right now, let's get out to the freeways here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good afternoon. The Dow down nearly 100 points at 44,148. The big news, the NASDAQ up to a record high of more than 300 points, of 348 at 20,035 to an all-time high above 20,000 for the first time. The S&P 500 at 49 points at 6,084. The volatility index, the VIX index, down 4%. The inflation number coming in pretty much in line with expectations. Inflation ticking higher by 0.3% at the consumer price level. Oil also higher today, up 5 cents to $70.34 a barrel here at the moment. The other big story, Bitcoin achieving a new high close for the day. This is being reported as the highest we've seen here, $101,433 per Bitcoin. Not the all-time high price for Bitcoin, but according to the Bitcoin sites and so forth, it's being celebrated as a milestone today. Right now, Bitcoin is down about $400 at $101,000. Ethereum down 10 at $3,821. And Doge at the moment at 41 cents. Gold also moving up today. Right now, we see gold hovering at around $2,753.80 an ounce. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Decision day today at the Los Angeles City Council. The council delayed until today a vote on a proposal to increase the minimum wage for tourism workers here in the Los Angeles area, including hotel and airport employees who are seeking better compensation and health benefits ahead of the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Joining us live now is Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. Maria, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
What's the latest there at City Hall?
Well, today at City Hall, just moments ago, the meeting concluded. The City Council did vote to approve a new living wage ordinance for the tourism workers, as you mentioned. This is something that we are deeply disappointed that the council was unable to work together with both the employer community, the small business community, as well as with the workers to come to an agreement on a wage that could accommodate both workers, but the employers as well. We're considerate of the small businesses, many that are minority-owned, women-owned businesses that are already struggling and still trying to get out of the pandemic and increasing costs from inflation and just supply chain issues. Now they will be layered with an additional living wage ordinance. It results in a 55% increase to their labor cost over the next 3 years. For us, this is something that's just not sustainable for small businesses that are working on very thin margins. These type of costs can definitely lead to job loss, and we're just very concerned that that's a situation that many of our small businesses will find themselves in.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it live right now on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. The wage ordinance passed at City Hall today. Maria Salinas, what does this mean in practical terms? Were any adjustments made? Will the wage go up immediately starting the first of the year here? And what will businesses be looking at as far as minimum wage is concerned?
As far as minimum wage is concerned for this sector, The increase is expected to begin in July 1st of 2025. And thereafter, annually, it will start with an increase in 2025 at $22.50, $2 thereafter every year up until it reaches $30 in 2028. It's a significant amount. There's also additional costs that will be passed on related to health care, which could be significant for employers as well. Right now, this approval that was made in council was to direct the city attorney to draft the ordinance. The ordinance will come back to the city council for full vote, probably in another month or so, and then it will be enacted July 1. That's the timeline that we're aware of, should everything proceed as was outlined in today's meeting.
I see. So this was another hurdle toward the final passage. Is that right, or is this it now?
This is it now, as far as we understand. It will still need to go to the mayor for her approval, and certainly I'm aware of many small businesses that will want to speak with the mayor. Many small businesses that will not be sitting on the sidelines. They still want to prove their case to the council president, to the members of the council, so that when it does come back in a complete ordinance, I am sure you will continue to hear more from many of these small businesses that are in hotels, whether it's a cafe, a restaurant, a flower shop. They will be impacted. Whether they're concession stands within the airport, they will be impacted. And the supply chain that helps support those businesses, we expect that they'll be impacted as well. This is a very hard situation for many of those small businesses. We were able to identify several business owners that have restaurants at the airport or in hotels, or have closed down their restaurants or reduced their workforce because of just the unsustainable costs that we experience today. So this additional layer that will be laid on top of the existing labor costs and the existing living wage ordinance that exists today will only make it that much more difficult to really have our small business communities thrive in the city of Los Angeles. It will be very easy to go to a city next door and open your business somewhere outside of the city of Los Angeles when the costs keep piling up.
That is tough. And we're on the air live with Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, and certainly you and other business leaders and small business folks made a very compelling argument against doing this because a lot of jobs are on the line here now, as businesses simply cannot sustain this higher cost of doing business here in Los Angeles, with the minimum wage for the tourism sector going up to $30 as it stands here now, and then the additional, as you mentioned, healthcare considerations and all that. What is your message to the mayor at this point to reconsider this?
Well, we would really like to have the mayor take a very close look at this and really see how she can intervene and get back to that council to see if they can really think through a reasonable compromise. No one's saying that we're opposed to a living wage or we're opposed to $30, but it should be done in a manner that is palatable for those businesses that are trying to employ and keep their employees in their jobs. We don't want to lose jobs. We want to be creating more jobs. And a more reasoned approach to establishing a living wage ordinance is something that we've been asking for since day one. The moment this ordinance was first introduced in the spring of 2023, we have had a broad coalition that includes a vast array of business community members, not only the Chamber of Commerce, but organizations throughout Los Angeles, minority-owned chambers, Latino chambers, African-American chambers, you name it. They have been with us all the way through as their members are really feeling the effects of today's economy, and knowing that this additional labor cost is heading their way. It just makes them tremble in their own places today.
Maria Salinas, thank you very much for breaking this big news here. Nothing's been written up about it, by the way. So you are the first on the air with this big news here regarding the passage of that wage ordinance at Los Angeles City Hall today. And we'll expect further details on this shortly. And looks like it was an overwhelming vote at the City Council on this, despite business group opposition. Maria, we look forward to keeping an open line to you here, and thank you very much for taking the call. Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
And out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues on 790 KABC. Clock is ticking for TikTok. TikTok not done fighting after a federal appeals court upheld the sale or ban law last week. Explaining that for us now is appeals attorney Chad RUBACK. Chad, thank you very much for taking the call on this big story this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Take it from the top, Counselor, and tell us what we need to know about this ahead of the deadline next month. The law that TikTok is facing here, a sale or a ban here in the United States.
Absolutely. A federal law passed by Congress and signed by President Biden back in April ordered that ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, must divest its ownership of TikTok by January 19th, one day before President Trump's investiture. That law prohibits app stores like Apple and Google from offering the TikTok app, also bars internet hosting services from supporting TikTok in any way, unless and until ByteDance divests TikTok by that deadline. In May, ByteDance and TikTok filed a petition with Court of Appeals against the U.S. government in District Columbia jurisdiction, arguing that the law is unconstitutional. And just last Friday, that Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia upheld the law in a 3-0 decision. 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat unanimously decided that that law was, in fact, constitutional. On Monday, I guess 2 days ago, ByteDance and TikTok filed a motion in the Court of Appeals requesting a stay of that January 19th deadline to give the U.S. Supreme Court an opportunity to review it, to decide if the Court of Appeals got it right and the law is, in fact, constitutional, or if the Court of Appeals messed it up and this law is unconstitutional. They've requested that the Court of Appeals rule on this emergency stay by December 16th. The Court of Appeals is under no obligation to do so, but that's a deadline that ByteDance and TikTok have requested the Court of Appeals impose on itself. There has not yet been a relief sought from the U.S. Supreme Court, but it's a certainty that ByteDance and TikTok will be going there next. Even if the Court of Appeals in D.C. denies this emergency relief, this emergency stay, ByteDance and TikTok could request that same relief from the U.S. Supreme Court, and it's entirely possible the U.S. Supreme Court could then grant that emergency relief, that emergency stay, to allow itself an opportunity to consider things. Even if ByteDance and TikTok don't prevail in the U.S. Supreme Court, even if, say, the U.S. Supreme Court does not take up the case, doesn't decide to consider it, or alternatively decides to consider it and ultimately rules that the law is unconstitutional, the Trump administration, specifically the Trump Attorney General, could decide, I'm not going to enforce this law. That is a possibility, and that might be an end run around by which ByteDance and TikTok could effectively nullify the law even while it's still in the books, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much for laying it out beautifully there. And so a lot at stake here. TikTok, of course, the most popular social media platform. And this is supposed to be, if the current status the law holds, TikTok will be banned January 19th, one day before President Trump will take the oath of office. Do you have a dog in this fight, by the way? How do you expect this to play out?
It's sometimes tough to predict the U.S. Supreme Court, especially when there's not a Republican answer or a Democratic answer. Our former and future President Trump has himself flip-flopped a bit on this. At one point, he was strongly opposed to Chinese ownership of TikTok. He was in favor of a ban like this, forcing TikTok to divest ByteDance to divest its ownership of TikTok, hoping that it would in fact be sold to an American company. Then Trump appeared to change his mind upon further reflection, and now he seemed to be a big fan of ByteDance ownership of TikTok. So in light of the fact that President Trump has taken some inconsistent, seemingly positions on whether China should be allowed to own TikTok, it's unclear whether the Republican majority in the U.S. Supreme Court is going to side with what President Trump currently wants him to do or what President Trump previously wanted them to do just a few years ago.
Appreciate you laying it out very effectively. We're speaking to Chad RUBACK, an appellate attorney based in Dallas, Texas, who's been watching the TikTok saga play out here, and certainly a lot of concern about China eavesdropping on American citizens via this app, and so that's what led to this law, right? What else? Anything new that's come up regarding what the Chinese might be doing, gathering information about American citizens through this most popular social media app?
The proponents of this law have certainly cited Chinese surveillance on Americans, Chinese government getting all sorts of information from people's phones if they have this TikTok app on the phone. The other basis the proponents cited in pushing for this law is dissemination of Chinese propaganda. If the Chinese government, via ByteDance, owns this app, and it's an extremely popular app among American folks, particularly youngish Americans, there's a concern that propaganda will be spread via the app, and it could be quite convincing propaganda. The Chinese government is talented when it comes to propaganda, as I understand it, and TikTok could be a very effective source of spreading such propaganda to American young people and American young voters, especially, in addition to the surveillance concerns. Those are the two issues that proponents of this law had expressed at the time that this law was being considered by Congress. It's notable that this law was, in fact, passed in a bipartisan fashion. In the House of Representatives, it passed by an overwhelming margin of 352 to 65. In the Senate, it passed by 79 to 18, with 3 folks abstaining. So in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, this bill passed in a bipartisan fashion. We'll see what the U.S. Supreme Court does, if anything, by that January 19th deadline. If the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't do anything, we'll see what the Trump administration does in terms of enforcement or lack thereof of this law.
Thank you very much for that effective presentation here on this big story here involving the biggest social media app in the world, TikTok. Chad RUBACK, appellate attorney based in Dallas. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. We'll keep a line open to you as we follow that story closely. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. and TJ Jefferson bring their unique take on sports entertainment with no contest wrestling, with guests like WWE Hall of Famer Mark Henry.
What is that night like for you as world champion?
I remember getting in my hotel. I'm looking at the chair with the title on it, and I remember crying. I couldn't believe that it was in my room and that I was sitting here looking at this title like it was a person.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network, wherever you listen.